Hello, Comment29 here, another topic of the week video. This week I'll be talking about Code Geass. This week's topic was submitted by Tumblr anon, and their topic is: could you do a topic video on how you would write Code Geass to be a better show? I remember watching Code Geass, geez, was that 7, 8 years ago? Well, it's a lot longer than I thought it was. But yeah, I remember watching that show way back, and there was some stuff that I liked about it. I liked a lot of the characters, story ideas, the setting. I really liked that, like the alternate universe history that it had going. But it had a lot of bad writing, and it got really dumb. Now, I don't actually have a significant rewrite, not like I did for Ruby or like I did for Halo 4. And it's mainly because I just never really spent a whole lot of time really like focusing on a significant serious rewrite. The closest I did for that was in college. I started writing an abridged series. I was working on it with a guy I was roommates with at the time. And just fun fact, I actually started my YouTube channel originally for that abridged series. Now, obviously it never actually happened, but I did write around, I wrote 7 scripts for, 7 episodes for it. And yeah, I'm still kind of disappointed that it never actually happened though. If it ever did happen, I'd have to go back and rewrite and, clean up a lot of those drafts, because I remember looking back at them a few years ago, and yeah, I used quite a bit of topical humor. Yeah, there's a lot of it that's, rewriting it, and, that's why it's the only reason why I'm mentioning it. But yeah, I used a lot of topical humor, and that was an important lesson for me, that you need to be very careful with topical humor, because in a few years or even a few months, what you're talking about is going to be outdated. Some people won't even remember it. And it's very likely not going to be very funny. So yeah, that was an important lesson to learn. Now when it comes to rewriting it, considering it was simply an abridged series, not a full rewrite, because I would have to be using footage from the show, I had to come up with, explanations for things that were happening. So, I decided to go ridiculous with a lot of stuff, like the fact that Ogi was actually an OSI agent who was blackmailed into working against the Japanese resistance. So he's working against them the whole time, and so his ultimate betrayal in Season 2, which came out of left field and doesn't make any sense in the show, actually is build-up. Then there's other stuff too, but it's stuff like that. Like, cause I was actually, when I was writing the story, it was I wanted to give some to clean things up a little bit, even if it's being very humorous, even if a lot of jokes, I still wanted to do that. That is me. If you've seen anything about my rewrite videos, then you know that I take a lot of this stuff very seriously. But yeah, that's about the most I did for it. I never actually put together a serious rewrite on it, and so unfortunately, I won't be able to have a significant hour and a half, 2 hour, of content to talk about rewrites. But I do think I'll pick out a few things that could have been fixed, and just to give some better ideas of how to do things. For the most part with Season 1, I don't remember there being any significant issues that would warrant overhauling the story, until you get to Euphemia's death. And yes, I should probably say it, spoiler alert if you care about a show that came out like 10 years ago. But Euphemia's death was pointless, and it was stupid, and the only reason it happened was to push the plot forward and to retain the status quo. That's literally it, because Lelouch had to be fighting his bloody rebellion, and Euphemia, who was actually figuring out a way to settle things peacefully, had to die, because the writers couldn't think of a way to, write around the story, or continue the story in the logical progression that it had been going in. And it's so stupid, because Euphemia has so much potential with her character. Now, fixing that was actually not all that hard. I like the fact that Euphemia had been taking a peaceful and political route instead of, Lelouch's violent rebellion. And I like that she'd gone out of her way to try to help out the Japanese. And this really, really works with her relationship with Suzaku. And, a lot of people think that Suzaku's best stuff comes from when he was with Euphemia. And I have to agree. And some people think that he's actually only a good character with Euphemia. And I have a hard time arguing against that, particularly when you get into Season 2. After she dies, in the end of Season 1, Suzaku flies off the handle, and in Season 2, Suzaku becomes a total prick, and he's wholly unlikable in Season 2. By the end of it, you're just like, you just don't really care about his character, which is sad, because in Season 1, I did like his character. It's dumb writing. But with Euphemia, I liked when Lelouch met with her in private, revealed that he, as Zero, is Lelouch, and just started talking to her. And he admitted defeat, that she had been accomplishing what he had tried to, which I love that. I love the interaction that Lelouch has with Euphemia. And he was just going to basically stop and, sort of work with her. Awesome! We now have a significant, interesting development in the story, and oops, I forgot to mention, all of a sudden Lelouch's Geass in that episode was starting to go on the fritz. And when he's talking to Euphemia, he just happens to say, I can make you kill all of the Japanese, and he accidentally Geasses her into killing all of the Japanese. Lelouch is a much better character than someone like Light Yagami. Light Yagami is bad. Light Yagami was a terrible character. Lelouch's victories always felt earned to me, because he has the whole freaking universe going against him. It's literally the opposite, of Light Yagami. Light Yagami has literally the whole universe bowing down to him and catering to him until the very, very end. But even at the end, it's not even his fault that he got caught. But that Death Note's a topic for another discussion. I actually did talk about that a bit in my, when I talked about the Death Note movie. But Euphemia's death literally only happened to make Lelouch lose, because he can't have anything nice. And it gets to the point where it's infuriating. It's just, come on. Cut the guy some slack. Seriously. And Lelouch had to continue being Zero with the Black Knights and their, violent rebellion. And, yeah, that's it. That's the reason why she's killed. She's led like a pig to the slaughter for no other reason than because the writers couldn't think of what to do. What they should have done here, really, is that they work together and it goes off without a hitch. Until you start getting, the Britannian Empire involved, and you start getting this whole issue from blowback, because Britannia is racist against the Japanese. They established this quite heavily. So then you would have this blowback from nobles, from other members of the royal family, from maybe like Schneisel, from the emperor himself. Like, delve into that. In fact, you can still have things go wrong, and you can still have Lelouch take up the violent rebellion, but you can still keep Euphemia alive. In fact, it would actually have been great, though, if Euphemia sacrificed her, maybe not her nobility, but basically sacrificed the political power she had as a princess in order to help the Japanese. Because how great of a message would that be? And how great would that be for the Japanese to see a princess of, Britannia actually going out of her way to help them, even at the cost of her own, status, which is super important, like their royalty. And then she could become a significant advocate for the Japanese, and then working with Lelouch in any way she can to help out and basically to, fight against the Britannian Empire. That way you can still keep things going in essentially a similar direction while keeping Euphemia alive and actually doing some things that are beneficial to the Japanese in the story. Also, Suzaku doesn't go freaking insane and doesn't become the world's biggest douchebag. So that's always a plus, and that changes a lot of what goes on. But even then, you can still actually have a lot of, like, the setup for season 2, because then you could have the Emperor getting involved in what's going on, and then you would cut to season 2, and then you have everyone back at school and everything seems normal. Because I remember when I was first watching season R2, like, holy crap, I thought I was tripping balls when I started watching this. Like, why is everyone at school? Why does this feel like it's the beginning of season 1? What? Does no one remember what happened? Who's Rollo? Why is he Lelouch's brother? Where's Donnelly? And you ask all these questions and you find out that no, yeah, Rollo is an assassin from the Britannian Empire, and all their minds were changed because Charles has a Geass. And okay, that's actually interesting, but his actual, like, direct involvement was sort of mentioned only after the fact. Him having a Geass is something that should be mentioned after the fact, but having Charles get involved at the end of season 1 to stop Euphemia would actually probably have worked a lot better. And I'm coming up with a lot of these ideas sort of off the top of my head. That's why it's this isn't planned or written out like some of the other ones. But that would actually do a lot for the story. And then you have Lelouch getting back into the groove of being Zero with the Black Knights. As much as I like the 1 million Zeros, I wouldn't have the whole, I like the fact that the whole thing in China. And one thing I did think that was sort of a missed opportunity is the fact that they could have explored the different parts of the world and their interactions with Britannia. Like, what if they had to flee from from Britannia at different times and they had to go from country to country? I mean, shoot, you could actually fill up a couple seasons with just that. Or maybe if you just want to dedicate a couple arcs to that, you could have them in China, then maybe go to Europe, and so you kind of get a little bit more of what's going on in these different parts of the world. Maybe they see what's going on in the Middle East. Like, I think that's how, was it Cornelia? Yeah, it was Cornelia was introduced. I almost said Sephiroth, because that was actually a joke in my abridged series that everyone called her Sephiroth because she was so ruthless, but that's neither here nor there, really. You could have really explored a lot of what was going on around the world, and we could have really gotten to see all the stuff that's just sort of mentioned. And it's like, hey, we mentioned this stuff. Hey, this area got conquered. Or, hey, this is China. Or there's Europe. Or there's the Middle East. You know, hey, it's like, this is actually kind of interesting stuff. Like, seeing Japan is interesting. But seeing them in different parts of the world is also really cool. I actually would have liked them to have dedicated more time to that. And then having Lelouch play these chess games with Schneisel. That actually would have done a lot of cool. Like, I don't think that would have been cool if they focused a lot of that. Excuse me, particularly with the different parts of the world where Schneisel is trying to hunt them down, or Schneisel and Charles, and maybe during this time they actually uncover more about the Geass Order. I think it was called Order of the Geass, or whatever that was, and then they find out more about the history of the Geass and stuff. Because a lot of that was just kind of there. You get some stuff near the end, and you get Lelouch's, like, uncle, who's, like, looks like a little kid. It's weird. But, and they could have really developed a lot of that stuff. And one thing I actually would have liked is to see Charles, the Emperor, take in a more proactive role, because he's got all this stuff going on with his ultimate evil schemes. But it would have been nice to see him have more of a presence in the show. That way, when he does end up having his conflict with Lelouch and Lelouch ends up beating him, it would probably feel like it has more weight to it and more impact to the story. Another thing, Shirley's death was stupid and it didn't need to happen. It's only happened because Rollo, she mentioned not only to Rollo, and Rollo being the complete irredeemable psychopath he is, he's like, alright, I guess I'm gonna murder her now. Like, the idea of Rollo's character was interesting. Pretending to be Lelouch's brother, he'd grown up as a child assassin because he had a Geass. A very special Geass that worked very well in his favor to kill people. But then, when he's posing as Lelouch's brother, he actually experiences what it's like to have someone who's like family to you. And he ends up actually caring for Lelouch. That actually would have been great. Forming a sort of adopted sibling bond with him would have been a neat idea if that's what they did. Fortunately, he went full yandere and was just like, he's my big brother and I will kill Nunnally, and it's like, ugh. Rollo ended up being a complete waste. And the fact that he killed Shirley was just a cherry on top of the stupid sundae that was Rollo's character. I hated Rollo. The only good thing he did was die. Which I'll talk about that, a little bit later, but I really would like to have seen Shirley, like, after all that Shirley had been through, the loss of her father, all the crap, finding out what Lelouch had done, I think she had her mind wiped like 2 or 3 times. I don't remember exact numbers, but she got her mind back each time, and she still loved Lelouch. That always floored me, that she still understood, and that even when she remembers all the crap that went down, she still cares about him. Like, dang. It's like, that's a character who I can legit, like, that's legit love. Like, that's crazy. And I also like how they had that whole, like, Valentine's Day thing going on with the Cupid thing that Millie set up to, and they ended up sort of getting together. Like, Lelouch and Shirley sort of got together. And I'm like, nice. And, I mean, yeah, I did ship them, but I'm like, cool. And then not too long after that, Shirley gets killed. Like, oh yeah, I forgot. Because we need to make Lelouch depressed so that he can fulfill his final gambit. Because everything has to push Lelouch into being as desperate as possible. Because that's the way the writers wrote the show, instead of being reasonable. Seriously, cut the guy some slack. But, one thing I really wanted to see with Shirley is her actually help Lelouch. She was going to help Lelouch before Rollo killed her. But I actually would have liked to have seen her maybe even join the Black Knights. I mean, shoot, there's all this crap going on. I mean, it would have been nice to see some other characters like even Rivals and Millie maybe get involved with the Black Knights. Or help out how they could. Millie using her family connections, she could have helped. I would have loved to have seen Shirley actually directly help Lelouch, like she wanted to. I remember she picked up a gun and she's just like, "I'm gonna go help Lelouch." Nice. Then Rollo's like, "It's stabby time," and it's a complete waste of Shirley's character, and it just felt so cynical and so depressing. Hey, these actually genuinely kind and sweet characters, kill them. Because we need to make this show as dark and depressing as possible. I'm sick and tired of writers doing that. I'm sick and tired of it. A lot of people complain that there are civilian characters that didn't do much. I didn't really think that was much of an issue. But it would have been nice if Shirley actually did help him out. If Shirley joined the Black Knights, that would actually be interesting. Like an actual Britannian joining the Black Knights. That's actually neat. I actually like that idea. I've seen people draw art of that, of her, helping the Black Knights, and it's just like, we could have had it all. But, yeah, fortunately, they failed to really work on the potential of some characters. One of the dumbest things about R2, though, has to be the fact that you had Okay, well, one of the things is the Knights of the Round were pretty much all pointless, except for just a couple of them. Like, you had Suzaki. I mean, aside from Suzaki, you had Bismarck, who was a primary antagonist. You had Crazy McKiller guy, who no one cares about him. And then you had Gino and Anya. Gino and Anya are really the only ones that matter out of them. They're probably the only ones that survive, and it's stupid. Honestly, I never even really cared for Gino and Anya's characters all that much. I cared more about the other Knights of the Round, and particularly ones that were still loyal to Charles, even after Lelouch became emperor. Like, I actually would have loved if they delved into these Britannian loyalists to see really what made them tick, what made them so loyal to Charles, the emperor, that they didn't transfer their loyalty to Lelouch. Like, that actually would have been an interesting point to talk about. Delve into this. Like, is this like sort of a Big Boss Foxhound situation? Like MGS1 Boss Foxhound, where a lot of them had a special connection to Big Boss, where like Sniper Wolf was basically rescued by Big Boss and he taught her how to snipe. Like, do they have that kind of relationship with Charles? Did he actually do stuff for these people that really earned their trust? Who cares, because Suzaku just kills him. Yay! Suzaku killing people, that's what I wanted to see. Season 2 Suzaku, I hate him. It's so stupid. I liked his character in Season 1 until they killed off Euphemia, but Suzaku is a total waste of a character. Along with, speaking of wasting the Knights of the Round, I like the idea that Suzaku wanted to change things from within, while Lelouch wanted to change things from the outside, putting them, diametrically opposing each other in the conflict of the Britannians versus the 11s, or the Japanese. It doesn't really work like that. And that doesn't really make anything. They don't do anything with it, really, because ultimately he just becomes a douchebag and you can't root for him. He had a noble goal at first, but when Euphemia died, he lost that and became a jerk, and then he kind of sort of sides with Lelouch at the end of the show, and it's like, yay, happy ending. But I'm disappointed with the Knights of the Round, and I liked some of the Knights of the Round. I wish we got more of them outside of just a couple ones. But if I was writing it, I would actually focus more on them, considering how important they are to the story. And if I actually extended the show to get maybe like a third season, and that you explore more of the world itself, involving the other Knights of the Round and maybe even other royals, there's a lot of stuff you can do with that to flesh them out, to get their backstories, to find out why they're so loyal to Britannia. Maybe have some of them, that aren't like Gino and Anya, actually end up siding with Lelouch at the end against Charles, because they realize that Charles is nothing but an evil, psychopathic monster. Ideas here. One of the things, though, that really pissed a lot of people off, and one of the dumbest things in the show, was the betrayal of the Black Knight. I mentioned this a little earlier. But, it makes no sense. It's completely illogical, and it only happens to screw Lelouch over. Literally, the only good thing that resulted of it was that Rollo died. It's the only good thing his character did. But, then the Black Knights are confronted by Schneisel, and he reveals Lelouch and his Geass ability of mind control. And, of course, the rational explanation for all this is that he Geassed all of them into fighting for him. Oh, yeah, now we're going to turn against Lelouch. Though I think, what was it, Tamaki, I think, was the one who was just like, no way. I think so. I'm trying to remember. I hope that wasn't a line from my abridged series. sometimes I mix them up because I remember the abridged lines more than the actual show, but there was some minor resistance from the Black Knights, and then they're just like, yeah, and then Ogi comes in, he's like, yeah, this is right. Like, yeah, thanks, Ogi. If you wonder why people hate Ogi, it's because of that. He ended up pushing the Black Knights into betraying Lelouch. And the logic of this is stupid. They trust freaking Britannia, Schneisel. Their sworn enemy. They trust him over the guy who's helped them out numerous times, led them into greater success than they had ever known. Because he might have made them work for him. But even then, so what? Don't they all want to fight for Japan and against Britannia? And what's really dumb, though, is that there's never any explanation given for Lelouch's abilities. I mean, Lelouch could easily have explained himself. I mean, seriously, if there was any doubt, he could literally just go, you know, if I brainwashed you with my Geass, you would be mindless puppets. You wouldn't have any free will to go against me if I mind controlled you. And at that point, you'd be like, oh yeah, I guess if you did mind controls, you wouldn't just, you know, go, oh yeah, I want you to follow me and be loyal, unless you have doubts, and then in case you can try to kill me. But that whole situation was contrived. Just don't have it happen. Or maybe have them actually, I think it would be like Toto and Ogi, maybe have them trick Britannia, making them think that they're going to side with them against Lelouch. But then boom, they pull out at the last second that no, they had really tricked them. It would have been great to see them actually plan one of these elaborate gambits for once. But yeah, I mean, all the loyalty that they had was just gone. Like, and it's like, really? Speaking of loyalty, Jeremiah Gottwald. His character was interesting at first. Okay, interesting later. Not very interesting at first because, honestly, my first impression of him was, so he's just kind of a racist douchebag. But then you actually, later on, he ends up becoming ends up dying and becoming a cyborg, and then it gets convoluted. It really gets convoluted. But you eventually, later on, get his story that he actually, was supremely loyal to Lelouch's mother. And then he transfers his loyalty to Lelouch. And then he ends up working with Lelouch. I'm like, wow, this actually redeemed him in my eyes. At that point, I mean, for most of the show, a lot of the show, up until he ended up becoming the storm of mother effing loyalty, I never really liked his character much. And it's like, oh wow, this is actually cool. And retroactively, this makes me like him more. Knowing that he, had loyalty. I think he was even in love with Marion. But to know that he goes out of his way to care for, Lelouch, to follow Lelouch, I'm like, no, that's interesting. He's Britannian, but unlike other Britannians who stayed loyal to, like, the Emperor, he goes right and serves Lelouch. That's cool. I like that. Characters like that, really, there should have been a lot more development with them from early on. Like, excuse me. Like, there's a lot of interesting stuff you can do with Jeremiah. But you really should have developed a lot of that stuff earlier, and it's annoying because it's like, yeah, I ended up liking his character, and he ends up becoming a fan favorite character because, well, yeah, I mean, he's actually really likable by the end of the series when he's a loyal cyborg to Lelouch who embraces oranges. It's a epilogue implying that he owns an orange farm with Sayako, which, it's like, that's great, but it's like, yeah, I mean, there's stuff like that they really could have developed. I have characters like Jeremiah, characters like Valletta, really develop a lot of these characters, and I know that would probably be better with with more seasons, like I said, and that actually would have been great to really develop a lot of those side characters, so that when you get this stuff, it doesn't feel so jarring, like a complete 180 for Jeremiah's character. It's like, oh yeah, he's actually not that bad. Nice. And ultimately, I mean, I like the idea that Lelouch ends up like, pulling that crazy gambit at the end. But what I do like, I mean, I would like the idea, I always like the theory that he took. I always had the theory that he took Charles's Code of Immortality, and I know it's like there's a lot of BS that goes on, but I always thought he took that, and when Suzaku killed him, he ends up becoming immortal. But there's a lot of stuff that really needs to be tightened up in the story, and I'm focused on other stuff right now, honestly, so I don't think I'm actually going to do a straight up full rewrite, and I know half of this was mostly criticisms, but, well, you gotta criticize the stuff to point out what's wrong, and then how to fix it, but yeah, I think maybe giving this one more season, not just 2 seasons, maybe 3 seasons, you spend a lot of time like exploring the world and developing all the side characters. Fleshing out the whole thing with Charles and the Geass Order, so that you get to learn more about that and really delve into that history. Like C2, like, she has all her extremely long life. It's like, I really, really, really want to learn more about what's going on. But I felt like I didn't know as much about the world as I really feel like I should have by the end. And it's mostly because, like, the show didn't really care as much. Like, when Lelouch ends up finding the Geass Order, he ends up just killing everyone. Yay. But yeah, not focus on, developing all those side characters, the world building, exploring the different countries, not killing these important characters off. Like, characters can die, but certain characters like Euphemia and Shirley, and I want to see them do more, make good on their plot. What's the point of Shirley's, issues with losing her father if ultimately she's just going to die? It doesn't have any long-term effect. It doesn't mean anything. What's the point of all that stuff with Euphemia if, she just gets killed off? Honestly, though, what I really would have liked to have seen is Cornelia actually working with Lelouch because of Euphemia. Euphemia convinces her to, go against the Empire, and so that, Cornelia's loyalty is ultimately with her sister and Lelouch. And not only, too, because they were they were always close when they were younger. It's like, delve in more of that, and I actually want to know more about the royal family, too. You can delve into more of that. Delve into exploring that, their past. We only get snippets of the past with Lelouch and Cornelia and Euphemia and Nunnally. It's like, I want to know more about this. We hear about stuff, and there's some, like, if I remember correctly, I think there's some supplementary material that goes into even giving freaking Clovis more character. It's like, I want to see more of that. That's actually interesting. Maybe Clovis can actually survive and actually have a decent character. But, those are just rewrites, ideas. But yeah, and ultimately, I think they top that all off. Have Charles actually be involved more, and it kind of explain things, so it doesn't feel like in the last bit of the show they're just like, oh yeah, by the way, we're just going to start explaining a bunch of stuff, and making it feel like it's totally rushed and no one really knows what's going on. But yeah. Well, I think I talked about this longer than I actually expected that I would. Well, I mean, I know it's not as concise as the other topic videos that I talked about rewriting, but yeah, I actually ended up coming up with a lot of ideas on the fly here. So, yay. Oh, well, that's it for this video. If you want to submit a topic to me, you can comment below on YouTube, or if you're on Tumblr, you can simply send me an ask and do topic, and then whatever topic you want me to talk about. Just make sure to follow the rules that I'll be posting down below. If you want to watch last week's topic video, you can check that out here. And if you want to watch next week's topic video, you can check that out here when I get that done. And thank you for watching.